This is Mrs. Wainwright's Math Class, Chapter 3, Lessons 5, 6, 8, 9, and 12, Add and Subtract Decimals. Our learning target by the end of this lesson, you should confidently be able to say, I can use place value to add and subtract decimals. This lesson is about add, subtract, decimals. The letters are A for add, S for subtract, D for decimals. Add, subtract, decimals reminds me of the saying A for always, S for straight, and D for decimals. Add, subtract, decimals, always straight decimals. Why do we say this? Because when you're adding or subtracting decimals, you're going to write them vertically, and the decimals always need to be in a straight line. For example, if I have 1 7/10, I'll write down 1.7, and I'm adding that to 32 8/10. First I need to line up the decimal. See, always straight decimals. And the 32 can go to the left of that, and the 8/10 can go on to the right of that. And I'm adding that to 0 and 53/100. Again, my decimal has to be lined up under the other decimals, always straight decimals. I put my 0 and then my 5, 3 for 53/100. So notice that my decimals are always straight. Add, subtract decimals means always straight decimals. They must be lined up. So when I'm adding or subtracting decimals, decimals must always be lined up in a straight line. And then place value zeros are added in to make equal columns before we start our adding or subtracting. Let's take a look and see how this works. Example number 1 says James recorded the amount of snow that fell in the first 2 hours of a snowstorm. In the first hour, James measured 10 7/10 inches. In the second hour, he measured 2 53/100 inches. What was the total amount of snow that fell in 2 hours? I have a word problem. Any word problem, first thing I'm going to do is look back at the question. And the question says, what was the total amount of snow that fell in 2 hours? It doesn't say about, it just says what was the total, therefore I'll need an exact answer. It's looking for the total amount in 2 hours. What else do I know? Well, let's go back and see. I know that James recorded the amount of snow that fell for the first 2 hours. I know that in the first hour there was 10.7 inches. I know in the second hour there was 2.53 inches. Okay, the first hour was 10.7 inches, the second hour was 2.53 inches. I need to know how much snow fell in that 2 hours. So actually this too is extra information. It's just the total amount of time. It's not the number of inches, so I won't be using that in my problem. Again, I have two different amounts. I know they're asking for the total amount, and if I want to find the total of two different amounts, I will need to add. So this is going to be an addition problem. So what am I going to add? The two amounts that he measured, which is 10.7, or 10 7/10, plus 2.53, which is 2 53/100. Let's move on to the next page to add that math. So my problem was 10.7 plus 2.53. Add, subtract decimals, always straight decimals. This is adding, so it has to be always straight. Write down my first number, 10.7. Notice I wrote it nice and big and spread out. My next number, I'll have to have always straight decimals. So first I focus in on the decimal. Again, I'm doing it in colors for the video. You don't have to do it in colors. It's just to show you what I'm doing step by step. So I pointed to my decimal. I make my decimal straight under my other decimal. To the left of that decimal I have a 2, so to the left I'll write a 2. To the right of the decimal I have a 5, 3, so to the right I'll write a 5, 3. This is an addition problem. Always check, because sometimes they may be mixed up, addition or subtraction. Put an equal bar, and now we need to make sure my columns are equal. All the way on the left I have a 1 with nothing under it, so I need to put in a place value 0. 0 and 2 are equal, my decimals are equal, 7 and 5 is equal, but my right column I'm missing a digit at the top, so I'll put in my place value 0. Now my columns are equal, my decimals are straight, I'm ready to go ahead and add. And 0 plus 3 equals 3, 7 plus 5 equals 12, put down the 2, carry the 1. When you get to the decimals, bring them down right away so that you don't forget. Bring down my decimal. I'll add 1 plus 0 is 1, plus 2 is 3, and 1 plus 0 is 1. So I get 13 and 23 hundredths. I'll bring this back to my original problem. So I worked this out on the other page and found that my answer was 13 and 23 hundredths. This is a word problem. The question says, what was the total amount of snowfall that fell in 2 hours? So my answer will be 13 and 23 hundredths inches of snow fell in the first 2 hours. Notice that in my answer there's no cheap decimals, nice decimal that looks like a decimal. And that's my final answer. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 1 right now. Remember that you must write your numbers vertically, you must line up your decimals, add, subtract decimals, always straight decimals, and you must fill in place value zeros to make your columns equal before you add or subtract. Number 2 says, find the sum of 9 and 84 hundredths and 35 and 6 tenths. So what do I know here? I know that I need to find the sum. And the sum is the answer to what kind of a problem? That's right, addition. I need to find the sum of 9 and 84 hundredths. THS reminds me that it's a decimal. The and is my decimal. And 35 and 6 tenths. Again, THS reminds me that that's a decimal. So my decimal will be at my and. Remember, add, subtract. This is add, subtract decimals, always straight decimals. So I need to write my numbers vertically, line up the decimals, and fill in any missing place value zeros. So my first number that I underlined in green said 9 and 84 hundredths. Here's my 9, and is the name of the decimal, so the decimal goes there. 84 looks like this, and is that in the hundredths column? Ones, tens, hundredths? Yes. This number is 9 and 84 hundredths, so that is correct. And I'm going to add that to 35 and 6 tenths. And is my decimal, so I'll line up my decimal, because I must line up decimals. In front of the decimal, I have 35, so I'll write down my 35. To the right of the decimal, I have 6 tenths, which is 6. So I'll write down my 6, and I'll look at my number. Does that say 35 and 6 tenths? Yes, it does. The 6 is in the tenths column. This is an addition problem because it's asking for the sum, so I'll put a plus sign and an equal bar, and let me line up my columns. First one is missing a digit. I'll put in a place value 0. 9 and 5 are good. Decimal and decimal are good. 8 and 6 are good. 4, it's missing a digit. I'll put in a place value 0, and now I can add. 4 plus 0 is 4. 8 plus 6 is 14. Put down the 4, carry the 1, bring down my decimal when I get to it. 9 plus 1 is 10, plus 5 is 15. Put down the 5, carry the 1. 1 plus 0 is 1, plus 3 is 4. So my answer is 45 and 44 hundredths. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 2 right now. Okay, let's move on to example 3. Jenna is running the 26.2-mile New York City Marathon. So far, she has run 9 and 75 hundredths miles. How much farther does Jenna need to run to finish the marathon? Word problem, underline my question. How much farther does Jenna need to run to finish the marathon? Well, some of the keywords, how much more, how much less, how much farther, how much longer, those are all keys to tell us that this is a subtraction problem. What do I know? I know the total of the marathon is 26 and 2/10 miles. I know she's already run 9 and 75 hundredths miles. So I have the total, and I have a portion that I'm going to take away from the total. That's how I'll find what's left over. So I have my 26.2, which was my total, take away 9.75, which is what she already ran, and that's how I'll figure out what she has left to run. Let's move to the next page to solve this problem. This is a subtract decimals problem. Remember, add or subtract decimals, always straight decimals. So I have to write them vertically. I'll take my first number, 26.2, and I'm going to line up my decimals. So I see my decimal, and I line it up. To the left I have a 9, so to the left I write a 9. To the right I have a 7, 5, so to the right I'll write a 7, 5. This is a subtraction problem, so I put a subtraction sign and an equal bar, and you need to go ahead and fill in place value zeros. So 2 is not a complete column. Put in the place value 0. 6 and 9 are good. Decimal and decimal are good. 2 and 7 are good. I'm missing a 0 right up here. Now I have 0 and 5 are good. We're ready to go ahead and subtract. So we start on the right, and if I have 0 Hershey's Kisses, can I give you 5? No, I'll need to borrow. So I go to the neighbor, knock, knock, knock. Do you have anything that I can borrow? Sure. The neighbor gives 1 away, so instead of having 2, the neighbor has 1 left. Remember, each column it's actually a 10, so bring that over there. I had 0 plus 10, so I have 10 in total. I have 10 Hershey's Kisses. I can give you 5. I have 5 left. Move on to the next column. If I have 1 Hershey's Kiss, can I give you 7? No. So I have to go to the neighbor. Knock, knock. Do you have any I can borrow? Sure. Cross it out. After the neighbor lends me, the neighbor only has 5. Bring that 1 or that 10 over. Now I have 11. So 11, take away 7 is 4. I get to the decimal, I bring it down. If I have 5, can I give you 9? No. So I go to the neighbor and borrow. Cross out the 2, that becomes a 1. Now I have 15. If I have 15 and I give you 9, I have 6 left over. Go to the next column. If I have 1 and I give you 0, I have 1 left over. So I have 16 and 45 hundredths. I'll bring that back to my original problem. So we said the difference was 16 and 45 hundredths. Question said, how much farther does Jenna need to run to finish the marathon? So my answer, Jenna needs to run 16 and 45 hundredths. Go back to my problem, and I see that it is miles, my unit, miles to finish the marathon. And that is my final answer. Please stop and complete worksheet number 3 right now. Example number 4 is another way you might see this problem, and it says find the difference of 12 and 4 and 17 hundredths. The difference is the answer to a subtraction problem, so this is going to be a subtraction. My numbers are all in word form, but it's 12, and my other number is 4 and 17 hundredths. THS tells me that it's in the decimal, so I have to find that and that's where my decimal will go. Again, this is a subtraction problem with decimals. Add, subtract decimals, always straight decimals. I need to write them vertically, line them up, and fill the columns with place value zeros. So my first number is 12, and I write that down. My next number, I notice, has this decimal, and my number 12 does not have a decimal. So I'll need to remove the invisibility cloak of the 12 and find the decimal. Now I can line them up for my always straight decimals. So I have my decimal, line up my decimal. To the left of my decimal I have 4, so to the left I'll write a 4. To the right of my decimal I have 17 hundredths, which is the 17. To the right I'll write 17 and make sure that that says 17 hundredths. Is that last digit 7 in the hundredths column? Ones, tens, hundredths. Yes, it is, so that is good. I'll check it off that I double checked. This is a subtraction problem, so put a subtraction sign and an equal bar, and let's fill in any missing place value zeros. On the left, 1 has no digit under it, so we put in the place value 0. 2 and 4 are good, decimal and decimal are good. Up, that 1 does not have a digit above it, place value 0. And the 7 does not have a digit above it, so place value 0. Now I'm ready to subtract. So I start on the right. I have 0 Hershey's Kisses. Can I give you 7? No. So I go next to my neighbor. Knock, knock. Can I borrow some Hershey's Kisses? Sorry, I don't have any. Hold on 1 second. That neighbor goes to his neighbor. Knock, knock, knock. Can I borrow some Hershey's Kisses? Sure, I have some. Take 1 away from this guy. Leaves him with 1 left over. He gives you that 1. Remember, every switch from a column is really 10. So this neighbor now has 10. This neighbor can now take 1 away from what they have, leaving them with 9, and give you that switch, which gives you 10. If there's 10, can we give you 7? Yes. 10 take away 7 is 3. 9 take away 1 is 8. Bring down my decimal. If we have 1, can I give you 4? No. So we go next door to this neighbor, borrow, leave that neighbor with none, bring that 10 over, I now have 11. And 11 take away 4 is 7, 0 take away 0 is 0. So I have 7 and 83 hundredths. This first 0, remember in a whole number, beginning zeros are unnecessary. It could stay, but it's really the more mature way to get rid of it. So my final answer would be 7 and 83 hundredths. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 4 right now. And our final example is example number 5. It's a money example. Remember that money with change is a decimal number. Change is part of a whole. It's less than a whole dollar. So anytime that you see money with decimals, it follows the same rule. If you're adding or subtracting the money, it's always straight decimals. So let's tackle question number 5. Jessica went to the mall to buy shoes. She found cute boots on sale for $19.83, including tax. Jessica gave the cashier a $50 bill. How much money did Jessica get back? Again, this is a word problem, so let's underline our question. How much money did Jessica get back? I know it cost a certain amount of money. She paid with a large bill, so I want to know how much she got back. This is going to be a subtraction problem. Let's see the facts I know in here. I know that the boots cost $19.83, and I know that she paid the cashier with a $50 bill. So I'm going to take my largest amount, because I always subtract with the largest amount. It doesn't have to look the largest, it has to be the largest. And remember, $50 is more than $19.83. So I'm going to take $50 minus the $19.83 that she paid. This is a subtraction problem with decimals, so I'm going to have to do always straight decimals and write my numbers vertically. So I take my first amount, which is $50, but then I get to the next amount, which is $19.83, and I see that there's a decimal. I don't have a decimal in 50, so I can't do always straight decimals. Therefore, I need to remove the invisibility cloak, the decimal's always at the end, and find that decimal. And now I can put down my decimal from 1983. To the left I have 19, a 9, and a 1, and a dollar sign. To the right I have an 8 and a 3. This is a subtraction problem, so I'll write a subtraction sign with an equal bar, and now I need to go ahead and fill in any place value zeros. My dollar signs are good, my 5 and 1 is good, my 0 and 9 is good, my decimals are good. Here is a place value 0 that needs to be filled in. Now 0 and 8 are good, and here's another place value 0 that needs to be filled in. Now 0 and 3 are good. So I'm ready to go ahead and subtract. Tricky problem with borrowing, but we can do it. Look all the way on the right. If I have 0, can I give you 3? No. So I have to go to this neighbor right over here. There he is, right there. Knock, knock, can I borrow some? Hold on a second. That neighbor runs next door to this neighbor. Knock, knock, can I borrow some? Hold on a second. That neighbor runs next door to this neighbor. Knock, knock, can I borrow some? Sure. We take 1 away from this guy, leaving him with 4, and that gives this next door neighbor 10. But now we can take 1 away from this neighbor, leaving them with 9, and that gives that next door neighbor 10. And now we can take 1 away from that neighbor, leaving him with 9, and that gives me 10. If I have 10, can I give you 3? Yes. 10 take away 3 equals 7. 9 take away 8 equals 1. Bring down the decimal. 9 take away 9 equals 0. 4 take away 1 equals 3. And bring down my dollar sign. So my answer is $30.17, but this is a word problem. So how much money did Jessica get back? Jessica got back $30.17. My unit is my dollar sign. And that's my final answer for number 5. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 5. And remember, dollars with cents are the same as decimals. So let's review. Add or subtract decimals means always straight decimals, because the decimals must always be lined up on top of each other. Decimals must always be lined up in a straight line, and then place value zeros are added in to make equal columns before adding or subtracting. And whether it's a word problem or a regular problem, once we have our problem, we're going to write it horizontally. So we take the first number, write it as is. If the first number does not have a decimal, then we need to remove the visibility cloak and find the decimal. In this case, it was already there. Then our next step is to line up our decimals. So we find the decimal of the next number, put it underneath. We find the digits to the left, we write them to the left. We find the digits to the right, we write them to the right. We write down our sign, look carefully to see if it's addition or subtraction, put down an equal bar. By the way, to get any credit for work, you have to show your addition or subtraction sign, or you can get no credit at all for work, or no partial credit. Then we need to fill in place value 0 so that every column is even. So we fill them in. We like to underline our place value 0, so when we look back, we know that it's a place value 0. Once you have everything filled in and even, you can go ahead and add or subtract whatever your problem is asking you to do. Remember that money is decimals. If there's change, change is less than $1, less than one whole dollar. So that is decimals. It follows the same rule as decimals. So hopefully at this point you can confidently say I can use place value to add and subtract decimals. Remember, we will be practicing this in class tomorrow, and if you need any extra help, be sure to see the teacher during class. Good luck with the lesson.